Well, good morning everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the very first Formula E in New York City. The first press conference is about to start, and I'm very pleased to say that joining me on stage is the President of the FIA, Todt, and also the Michelin President for North America, Selleck. Thank you both very much for joining us this morning. I know you've both got ridiculously busy schedules, but Todt, let's start off with talking to you, because what an amazing achievement, racing on the streets of New York. So many people have tried to do it, and Formula E now are.
I mean, thank you, good morning to all of you. I mean, it's a real privilege to be here, and I mean, to see the last works to make this race, Formula E race in New York happening. Incidentally, I was there for the launch of the event last year, and I must thank all those who have been participating to make that happen, and I mean, I'm very much looking forward to see the first race in Brooklyn tomorrow.
And can we just rewind a little bit, you know, back to the beginning, I suppose. You know, we're now towards the end of season 3 of Formula E, but there was a time when obviously Formula E didn't exist, but you have always been a strong believer that the Formula E Championship is an extremely important one. What's the kind of vision that you have for Formula E?
You know, I would not keep that specifically to Formula E, but the world is changing. And 50% of the population of the global world now are living in cities. By 2030 we should have 70% of the population, and you know about climate change, about pollution, about hybrid car, electric car, fuel cell car, and I mean that's one of the missions of the FIA is to first to have a vision of what should be technology in motorsport, but at all the level of motorsport, starting from categories like Formula 1, Endurance Championship, and we felt it was a great opportunity to make a new series, and it's something we discussed with Alessandro Agag in an open discussion, and at the time with Antonio Tajani, who was in charge of the transport in the European Commission, with now the President of the European Commission in Strasbourg, and that's how it started. And I mean, specificity that Formula E needed to be organized in the city, which is a challenge, but I mean, it's great and it's happening.
I mean, one of the amazing roles of the FIA is, you know, providing more motorsport for more of us to enjoy all around the world. But how does Formula E connect with the broader concerns like road safety, which is also so important to the FIA?
No, sorry.
How does Formula E relate to road safety?
I would say, I mean, any kind of motor racing is relating to road safety, because racing has to be a laboratory. And we, from the extreme, we go to what is happening on normal situation. And unfortunately, we know that road fatalities and road injuries around the world is one of the worst pandemic existing. I mean, if you think that simply in US, every year, you have 40,000 people who die on the road, and you have about 1 million people who are disabled because of road crashes. So, I mean, whenever we speak about racing, when we speak about laboratory, it has to be a synergy with what happened on the road.
Thank you very much, President Todt. I mean, Pete, I know that really sort of, I suppose, collaborates with a big campaign that you're talking about at the moment, beyond the driving test. Tell us more about that.
When Formula E started a couple years ago, we were challenged by the FIA to jointly come up with a way that we could actually leave a legacy in the communities in which races were taking place. And simultaneously, one of the daughters of one of our executives noticed that one of her friends who had just gotten his driver's license was driving around on a car with bald tires. And she went to her mother and said, look, you know, I was paying attention during my driver's training, but no one ever trained us anything about tire pressure, about checking for the wear of the tire, when the tire should be replaced. Mom, I think you need to do something about this. And so we went to the FIA. The FIA graciously said, yes, that's a great thing, we need to work on that. And we set a challenge to, first of all, study the problem. And we discovered that virtually no state in the country had any information at all about tire maintenance as part of the driver's training program. We also discovered that traffic deaths are the #1 killer of teenagers in the United States. And we discovered that of the 1 million crashes that teenagers are involved in every year in the United States, tire maintenance plays a role in about 12% of them. So there was a real call for action that we needed to do something. So we set a target back at the start of Formula E. A couple of years ago, we said by 2020 we want all 50 states to have in their driver's training elements for tire safety. And I'm pleased to announce today that we've actually achieved that 50 by 20, 2.5 years early. Every state in the country has committed now to have information about tire pressure, about tire wear, other elements of tire maintenance in their training programs in the coming years. So we're very appreciative of the partnership that we've had to make that happen.
I mean, that's such a fantastic achievement. I mean, I remember, I think when I passed my driving test, all I remembered was mirror signal maneuver, and that was about it. You definitely weren't looking at your tyre pressures or worrying about your tyre tread, so congratulations on that. I mean, you've been a partner of Formula E again from the beginning. Obviously, you've been involved with motorsport for hundreds of years. How important is it to be part of Formula E, such an innovative championship?
Michelin has been involved in racing from the beginning of our company more than 120 years ago. Racing is a tremendous laboratory for us, not only to develop innovation, but also to test against competition how we do. Matter of fact, we really like Formula E because, as John Todt said, clearly the electrification of cars is moving in that direction. Electric cars have some particular characteristics that make them unique. For example, there's a tremendous amount of instant torque that happens when an electric car accelerates, which puts a huge demand, obviously, on the wear of the tire. But at the same time, it's important that the tire have good rolling resistance so that we can have as much autonomy on the length, the amount of distance the car can go between recharging. So it's a real nice challenge for us, and already we're on our 2nd generation tire in this program, the Pilot Sport EV2, which is now getting 1 more lap than we were getting with the original tires. And that driving of innovation, that pressure, that pushes things forward. And you'll see today on the roads here all around the world a new tire that we've just launched on the market called the Pilot Sport 4S, which is very similar to the Pilot Sport EV2. A lot of the technology we developed in racing is now hitting the road.
That's brilliant. I mean, that's so key, isn't it, that you could convert that technology from race to road. Thank you very much for joining us, both of you.